At this table, you were never meant to exist. That's what my father said. Slowly. Coldly. In front of 30 people, family, colleagues, old money partners from Atlanta. Glasses froze midair. Someone coughed. My heartbeat sounded louder than the music. But to understand why that sentence hit like a blade, you need to know who I am. My name is Natalie Hughes. I'm 34. A sustainable investment strategist living in Savannah, Georgia. I spend my days helping corporations build portfolios that don't destroy the planet. And my nights convincing myself that I belong somewhere, anywhere. I've spent most of my life trying to earn a seat at a table I was never truly invited to. Not in the boardroom, I'm good there. But in my own family. In the Hughes household, there was always an unspoken hierarchy. Brandon, my older brother, was the heir. The golden son. Rachel, my younger sister, was the peacekeeper. Me? I was the question no one wanted to answer. When I was 9, I asked my father if I could shadow him for a day at Hughes and Company, his real estate firm. He looked at me and said, "Sweetheart, this isn't a place for doodles and daydreams." I had brought a whole folder of architectural sketches. When I got accepted into Wharton for a dual MBA in finance and environmental policy, Dad's only comment was, "You're wasting money on theories no one respects." Meanwhile, Brandon closed a minor property deal and got a standing ovation at Sunday dinner. Rachel volunteered at a local school and received a charm bracelet with compassion engraved. When I published my first article in Forbes on green bond investments, no one even brought it up. It didn't matter how many honors I received, how many panels I spoke on, or how much money I made. To my father, I was still extra. An accessory he didn't ask for. But I kept trying. Because when you're starved for approval, even crumbs feel like a feast. So when I was offered the role of director of ESG strategy at a major firm in Atlanta, I didn't celebrate with champagne or call my friends. I drove straight to a luxury dealership. I picked out a brand new Range Rover Autobiography, Deep Navy, his favorite. Had it delivered to his home with a silver bow and a handwritten card. For the man who taught me to work hard. With love, Natalie. 3 days later, we gathered for the annual Hughes family banquet. I wore a green silk dress and brought a bottle of Bordeaux that cost more than my first college semester. I thought, maybe this time, he'll look at me like he does Brandon. Maybe this time, I'll be more than tolerated. Instead, he raised a toast to his children. And ended with, "At this table, you were never meant to exist." I didn't cry that night. After my father said those words, "You were never meant to exist," I sat frozen, fingers curled under the tablecloth, nails digging into my palm like I could anchor myself to something that made sense. No one stopped him. Not my mother, June, who just blinked slowly like she hadn't heard him. Not Rachel, whose fork hovered midair. Brandon clinked his glass with one of Dad's business partners, unfazed. It wasn't just the insult. It was the ease, the practice, with which he delivered it. Like this wasn't the first time he'd thought it. Just the first time he'd said it out loud. I left without touching my food. The Range Rover was parked out front, polished and imposing. I remember looking at it like a stranger. Like I hadn't just spent $143,000 trying to be visible. I got in, turned the engine, and drove back to my condo in silence. No music. No air conditioning. Just the sound of my own breath. Shallow. Tight. The next morning, I woke up with makeup still smudged under my eyes and 2 missed calls from my mom. No voicemail. No text. Just her number, twice. I ignored it. Instead, I opened my laptop and stared at the wire transfer confirmation for the SUV. I remembered the look on the salesman's face when I told him it wasn't for me. "You're giving it to your dad?" "Yeah," I said, smiling, "he's been through a lot lately." God, I sounded pathetic. I went downstairs, took the elevator to the garage, and stood in front of the car like I was waiting for it to apologize. I knew what I had to do. That afternoon, I called the dealership. Told them the car hadn't been officially transferred to my father's name, which was true. Asked if I could schedule a pickup. The guy hesitated. Is there a problem with the vehicle? No, I said. Just with the story I told myself when I bought it. By the time the hauler came to take it back, I was already at my desk, sorting through ESG reports and trying to act normal. My assistant knocked gently. Ms. Hughes, there's a woman in the lobby asking for you. Says she's your mother. I sighed. June Hughes didn't show up uninvited. Her life ran on appointments and etiquette. If she came in person, it meant something, or she wanted to pretend it did. She looked the same as always, pearl earrings, hair pulled tight, navy cardigan with matching heels. A real Southern portrait. Can we talk? She asked. That depends, I replied. Are we pretending last night didn't happen, or are we finally being honest? She blinked. Then sat down. Your father, he didn't mean it that way. He meant every word. He's under stress. And I was the pressure point he chose to cut loose? She said nothing. Just smoothed out an invisible wrinkle on her skirt. Before she left, she placed an envelope on my desk. Your grandmother's will. I thought, maybe it's time you saw it. And just like that, she was gone. I stared at the envelope for a long time, heart thudding, stomach twisting. I hadn't even known my grandmother left a will. Much less that something in it might be meant for me. That night, I didn't sleep. And when I finally opened the envelope, I started to understand why I'd always felt like an outsider in my own bloodline. The envelope sat on my kitchen island for 2 days. I'd circle it like it might catch fire if I got too close. A part of me thought, if I don't open it, maybe I can keep pretending I belong here. Another part whispered, maybe this is the last piece of the puzzle you've been chasing your whole life. On the third night, after reheating the same bowl of tomato soup twice and never touching it, I tore it open. Inside was a copy of my grandmother Margaret Whittaker's handwritten will. Not a trust. Not an amendment. A full will. With witnesses. With notarization. With a signature dated just 6 months before she passed. My name was there. Clear as day. Natalie E. Hughes, granddaughter of Margaret Whittaker, to receive full stewardship of the Whittaker Mountain property and all associated mineral rights. I blinked. Reread it. Then read it again. The Whittaker land wasn't just sentimental. It sat on a shale deposit, quietly valued at over $4 million. Dad had been leveraging that property for years, using it to secure development loans. And now I knew. He didn't own it. I did. Suddenly, everything made sense. The hostility. The cold shoulder. The reason my name never showed up on Hughes and Company documents. I wasn't just the difficult daughter. I was the legal barrier to something he wanted control over. The next day, I made a call to a law firm in Atlanta that specialized in estate and mineral rights. By noon, I had an appointment with a woman named Abigail Price, an attorney who'd grown up in South Georgia and had the kind of no-nonsense voice that made you sit up straighter. You understand what you have here, she said after skimming the document. A ticking bomb, I replied. She didn't smile. A shield, she corrected. And maybe, a sword. That weekend, we had another family dinner. Not a banquet this time, just a Sunday roast at my parents' estate. Mom insisted. Let's not let one bad night ruin everything, she'd said on the phone. Which, translated from Hughes speak, meant, let's all pretend again. I showed up in black jeans, a navy blazer, no makeup. Minimal armor, just enough to feel like I wasn't walking in naked. Rachel greeted me at the door. She looked nervous, eyes darting to where Dad stood with Brandon, laughing over something in a Wall Street Journal article. Hey, she whispered, hugging me. You okay? Define okay, I said. Dinner started off civil. Pork tenderloin. Green beans. Red wine. The usual script. Then Dad turned to me and said, with that dry smirk he reserved for cocktail parties. "So, Natalie. I heard you took the car back. Didn't quite fit the image, huh?" I didn't take the bait. "No, it didn't fit the narrative," I said. "Turns out gifts come with strings. I prefer ownership." He blinked. Brandon chuckled. Mom dropped her fork. "Speaking of ownership," I added, "boy steady, I've been going over some family documents." Now I had their attention. Eyes narrowed. The air sharpened. "Turns out, Grandma left me the Whitaker property. All of it. Including the shale rights." Brandon scoffed. "You've been reading old paperwork again?" I pulled out a fresh copy of the will from my purse, placed it beside the mashed potatoes like it was part of the meal. Witnessed. Notarized. 6 months before she passed. You can verify with Abigail Price's office in Atlanta. Dad's face went stone still. Brandon looked like someone had slapped him with a checkbook. Rachel covered her mouth. No one said a word for a long minute. Then Dad leaned forward, voice cold and razor thin. "You think you can weaponize family?" I met his eyes. "No," I said. "I'm protecting the only family member who ever saw me." "You'd think dropping a legal bomb at Sunday dinner would buy me silence. Distance. A ceasefire." But it didn't. Instead, the text started. "The veiled ones. From my father. Family matters don't belong in courtrooms. From Brandon. You're not the only one Grandma loved. Don't get greedy. Even my mother, who rarely initiated contact, left a voicemail I could barely stomach. Don't do anything rash, Natalie. Let's not destroy what little trust we have left." What trust? I thought. The kind that withholds a multimillion-dollar inheritance for over 2 years? I forwarded the will to Abigail Price the next morning. She called me back within the hour. "It's solid," she said. "They'll try to stall, but they have no legal claim if this isn't contested within probate limits," and it wasn't. So they just pretended it didn't exist? Or they thought you'd never find it. Either way, we're moving forward. Her certainty steadied me. But something else gnawed underneath. Something deeper than legal strategy. That line Dad had said still clung to my skin like cold sweat. "You were never meant to exist." I couldn't shake it. Not just because it was cruel, but because it had sounded too specific. Too certain. I started going through old photos. Most kids have baby albums filled with sleepy smiles, cake-smeared faces, early birthdays. Mine stopped abruptly after age 5. From there, it was mostly school portraits, group shots, and one faded picture of me standing awkwardly beside Grandma Margaret on a front porch in Tennessee. I remembered that day. She'd hugged me tighter than usual. Whispered, "You're a strong one, sweetheart. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." I thought she was talking about bullies. Now, I wasn't so sure. I drove out to my Aunt Carol's place in Macon the following weekend. She was my mother's older sister, twice divorced, semi-retired, and the only Hughes relative who'd ever sent me birthday cards that actually had messages inside. She greeted me on her porch with a mason jar of sweet tea and a look that said, "It's about time." "I need to ask you something," I said, skipping the pleasantries. "About my birth." Her face didn't change. She just nodded slowly and gestured to the swing bench. It took her a while to speak. "Your mother and we've had our share of differences," she started. "But when she found out she was pregnant with you, she was scared. Real scared." "Why?" "Because Robert was on the verge of filing for divorce. They'd been separated for months. And..." She hesitated. "And there was a man she'd been close to. A friend from college. Martin Whitaker." I blinked. "Wait, Whitaker? Like Grandma's side of the family?" She nodded. Margaret adored him. Always said he was the only man who ever made June laugh. But he moved to Texas. Disappeared from the picture before you were born. And my dad? He just accepted me? Not at first. There were whispers. Questions. But Margaret stepped in. Paid for everything. Told Robert it didn't matter whose blood you had, you were family. I felt dizzy. Everything was tilting. Was there ever a paternity test? Carol looked at me long. Not that I know of. But if you want answers, you won't find them here. She reached into a drawer, pulled out an old shoebox, and handed me a yellowing envelope. Martin sent this the year you turned 10. Your mom never opened it. That night, I sat in my car, staring at the letter. My hands trembled as I unfolded the paper. It was short. To June. I don't know if you'll ever tell her the truth. But if she ever comes looking, I'll be in Austin. I never stopped wondering if she's mine. Martin. I booked the flight to Austin that same night. No suitcase. Just a carry-on, the letter from Martin, and a sense that the ground beneath me wasn't finished shifting yet. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Not Abigail, not Carol, not even Rachel. I needed this to be mine. Whatever this turned out to be. The plane touched down in late afternoon light, golden and too warm for late fall. I picked up a rental, pulled out my phone, and stared at the address scrawled on the back of Martin's letter. It wasn't much, a P.O. box and a neighborhood name in East Austin. Google gave me 3 possible matches. The third one had a property tax record listed under Martin D. Whitaker. The house looked modest, white brick, front porch swing, mesquite tree half strangling the mailbox. My hand shook as I parked across the street. I didn't knock right away. Instead, I sat in the car, breathing slow, the steering wheel cool beneath my palms. What was I expecting? A man in a cardigan with a photo album? A hug? An apology? Finally, I got out. The man who answered the door looked tired. Silver hair, beard scruffy, but eyes sharp. Familiar in a way that unsettled me. Can I help you? He asked. I think you might be able to. I told him my name. His expression didn't change. But his posture did, shoulders straightened, fingers gripped the door frame just a little tighter. Natalie, he said, voice low. You're June's daughter. Yes. He stepped back. Come in. The house was quiet, lived in. Bookshelves lined the walls. A guitar leaned against an armchair. There was no sign of a family. We sat across from each other at a small kitchen table. I took a breath. Did you love her? He blinked. That's not the first question most people ask. I'm not most people. He gave a small smile. Yes. I loved her. More than I knew how to show. But I wasn't the man her parents wanted for her. Not ambitious enough. Not refined enough. Just, not enough. I nodded. Did she ever tell you she was pregnant? No. I left for Dallas. Got a job offer I couldn't turn down. I wrote. Called once. She never replied. She told everyone I was Robert's daughter. Martin looked away. I thought about reaching out again. Especially when I heard Margaret passed. I figured if there was ever a time to reconnect. He trailed off. But then I figured, if I wasn't part of your life by then, maybe I had no right to insert myself. I pulled out a small envelope. This is a DNA kit. I already submitted mine. If you want to know, truly, whether I'm yours. He didn't reach for it immediately. Just stared at it for a long beat. Then he took it gently, like it might break if he held it wrong. What are you hoping to find, Natalie? He asked. The truth, I said. Not to replace anyone. Just, to know who I am when no one's trying to rewrite it. We didn't hug when I left. No dramatic goodbye. Just a soft drive safe, and the quiet closing of a door behind me. But as I walked to the car, I realized something had shifted. For the first time in weeks, maybe years, I felt like I wasn't chasing someone else's script. I was writing my own. It arrived on a Wednesday. A simple email. Subject line, "Your results are ready." I stared at the screen for a full minute before clicking. There it was. One line. No fluff. No drama. Just data. Paternal match, Martin D. Whitaker, probability, 99.9987%. I didn't cry. I thought I might. But all I felt was stillness. Like something inside me had finally stopped fighting. Like I'd been swimming against a current for years, and suddenly, the water just went quiet. I was not Robert Hughes's daughter. Not by blood. Which meant the man who called me a mistake at the family table had been performing a role for decades. Pretending. Resenting. And hiding. I called Martin first. He didn't say anything when I told him. Just let out a long breath that cracked halfway through. Then, I always knew. And I believed him. He offered to come to Savannah. I said not yet. I needed space to think. To choose what came next on my own terms. That weekend, I drove to the coast. I walked along Tybee Island at sunrise, let the wind shred through my thoughts. The truth didn't change my past. Didn't erase the years I spent trying to earn Robert's love, or the nights I questioned my worth. But it did change the frame. Because now I knew. I wasn't broken. I wasn't flawed. I was simply unwanted by the wrong man, and deeply wanted by another. Back home, I sat at my kitchen table and wrote 2 letters. The first was to Robert. "You once told me I was never meant to exist. Turns out, you were right, but not in the way you think. I wasn't yours. But I existed anyway. And I'd built a life more honest, more rooted, than anything your silence could erase. This is not a plea. It's a release. I didn't send it. I didn't need to." The second letter was to Abigail. I asked her to move forward, fully, with my claim on Grandma Margaret's estate. I wanted every legal channel opened, every asset traced. I had stayed quiet long enough. It was time to stop playing defense. And then, I made one more call. To a woman named Serena Williams, not the tennis star, obviously. But a media consultant I'd met at an ESG conference in Denver. "Serena," I said, "how do you feel about public family legacy exposés?" She paused. Then laughed. "Girl, you're about to make headlines, aren't you?" I smiled. "No. Just, correction notes. Long overdue ones." They called it the Hughes Legacy Gala. A black tie event hosted annually to honor visionaries of the firm, but this year was special. It was Robert's official retirement. The press was invited. So were investors, politicians, old money from Charleston to D.C. A farewell stage for a man who'd built his empire on polished smiles and family man fiction. And I was going to end it, with facts. I walked into the ballroom at the Savannah Maritime Club in a midnight blue pantsuit. No sequins. No apology. Just tailored precision and the confidence of someone who'd stopped asking for permission. People turned when they saw me. I wasn't on the guest list. I wasn't supposed to be there. Exactly. Brandon was holding court near the bar. Rachel hovered by the seafood table, visibly tense the moment she spotted me. My mother, June, stood next to Robert in a burgundy gown. Her face froze like glass when she saw me. Robert didn't notice, not yet. The mic was handed to him around 8:15. He took the stage, thanked the room for decades of loyalty, and raised a toast to the future. That's when I walked forward. No one stopped me. I climbed the stage, took the mic gently from his hand, like I'd been invited. The room went still. "Good evening," I said, voice calm but clear. "I won't take long." I just want to share a truth that's been missing from this legacy for 34 years. Robert tried to cut in, but I held up a hand. 34 years ago, a woman named June had a daughter she raised under another man's name. That man was Robert Hughes. He always knew, that I wasn't his. Gasps. But he kept the lie, because it was easier to perform a role than to deal with the consequences. He kept me close enough to control, but far enough to never love. I pulled out an envelope. This is the DNA proof. And this, I held up a certified letter from Abigail's firm, is my legal motion to challenge the Hughes estate distribution, including all assets that were quietly diverted away from the sole named heir of Margaret Whittaker. My grandmother. My real one. I turned to Robert. You once told me I was never meant to exist at your table. Tonight, I say this, I was never yours to own, but I am mine to reclaim. I stepped down without looking back. The room erupted. Voices overlapping. Cameras flashing. Rachel in tears. My mother staring into nothing. Robert? He just stood there. Like the story had ended before he could rewrite it. Outside, the air smelled like salt and magnolia. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. For the first time in my life, I hadn't come to be accepted, I came to be undeniable. It didn't happen overnight. The world didn't stop spinning after I left that stage. No thunder. No fireworks. Just quiet. And then, the work. Abigail kept me updated. The estate motion was strong, airtight, really. Robert never contested it. Maybe because he knew. Maybe because he was too proud to be seen defending a lie. Weeks passed. I returned to my life in Savannah. Only now, something had shifted. I used to walk into rooms with a question in my chest, do I belong here? Now, I entered with a statement, this is who I am. I met Martin for lunch on the porch of a vineyard outside Asheville. He looked at me like I was both a stranger and something long lost. We didn't hug right away. We just sat. Talked. Sipped tea in the silence between stories. He said he'd always wondered if I was his. He said he was sorry. And he meant it. I told him I wasn't here to fill a role. I just wanted honesty. To be seen for who I am, not who someone needed me to be. He nodded. Then let's start from there. A month later, I filed the paperwork. Name change petition, Natalie Elaine Whittaker. I kept my middle name, Elaine, my mother's name. Because as complicated as that relationship was. She raised me. She chose me. She failed me, yes, but she also taught me how to fight in silence. Now, I was choosing my name. On my terms. I didn't attend the next Hughes gathering. Word was, Brandon stepped up as acting CEO. Rachel left for Maine. Robert gave one interview, to a local paper. He said nothing of me. Of course he didn't. But a few days later, I received a package. No return label. Inside was a photo, me as a baby, held by June, standing next to Margaret Whittaker. Taped to the back. You were loved. She just couldn't say it. No signature. But I knew it was from her. Now? I'm building a new portfolio. Not financial, though I still love that work. This one's emotional. I'm investing in peace. In late-night phone calls with Martin. In long walks alone without the weight of proving anything. In the quiet, knowing that I am whole, even if my story was built on fracture. I don't need their table anymore. I built my own. And at this table? I exist, fully, fiercely, finally. Thanks for listening. If this story found a quiet corner in your heart, don't forget to subscribe, and if you feel ready, share your own story in the comments. Your voice matters. It always has.